Hey everybody, welcome back to Dear Kevin. I'm George Efta, as always, talking about my favorite Kevin Smith stuff. So, we got Clerks 2 coming up soon. That'll be the next video, but before we get to Clerks 2, I wanted to talk about the reason why Kevin Smith made Clerks 2. Part of the reason anyway. It's also the reason that I became such a huge devoted fan of Kevin Smith. It's, you know, my favorite thing, maybe, that he's involved with. It's spellbindingly inspirational and personal and wonderful. And that would be the documentary The Snowball Effect, which you can find on the CLERKS X DVD, as well as the 15th anniversary Blu-ray. Let me see here. This is a 3-disc set, this CLERKS X 10th anniversary set. And it's got the movie, it's got a bunch of commentary tracks, it's got the first Sundance cut, but it's also got this 3rd disc, which is just the documentary The Snowball Effect. The Snowball Effect is the name of the documentary. It's the making of Clerks, the story of how Clerks got made. Named after, you know, the the very vulgar sequence in the movie where they describe what snowballing is. Which, if you don't know, kids, look it up. It's gross. So, alright, Snowball Effect. I haven't been able to watch it in years because it's one of those things that it's so inspiring and wonderful and has such a happy ending to it, and I haven't made a movie yet. I haven't broken through. I haven't gotten, you know, into the filmmaking business. I haven't done it yet. And that's what the story is. It's the story of how, you know, everybody's lives changed when they got together to make this movie, and it got into Sundance and was purchased by Miramax and all that good stuff. So I have a hard time watching it out of, not exactly jealousy, but, you know, longing to be there. I've seen it a bunch of times, obviously, much like anything else. But I kind of have this weird thing in me where it's like I don't want to watch it again until I have a similar story to tell. So, like I said, it's on the CLERKS X DVD. In the booklet that came with it, you know, little liner notes, which is a very cool thing. It's got lots of pictures, behind-the-scenes behind-the-scenes photos of the making of Clerks. It's got like the original budget and the business cards that they had for View Askew back in 1993. But it also has a little opening essay, introductory note from Kevin Smith himself, and he talks lovingly about what this movie meant to him, and you know, how important it was for him to go back and revisit it for 10 years and to thank the fans. And he talks about how, like, working at the Quick Stop changed his life, and how, you know, if it wasn't for Scott Mosier coming down to help him make it, if it wasn't for the tapers, the people who run the Quick Stop, letting him do it, if it wasn't for just this ballsy idea he had, he never would have been a filmmaker, and everything that's been good in his life has come from the fact that he made Clerks, you know. He got to meet his wife, he got to have a kid, wonderful career, comic books, podcasts, all that good shit. And in this opening essay, he talked about, you know, also why he hated the job, because it was so easy and mind-consuming and boring, and it was very, 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 you know... It wasn't the thing where he could just sit around and do a dead-end job, which, like, the video store was pretty slow because it wasn't like a Hollywood Video or a Blockbuster. That was his dream job, was just to sit behind the counter, watch movies, and write all day. But he worked more often at the convenience store, which was pretty busy. Being a small convenience store in a small town, it was pretty heavily trafficked, which didn't give him the dead space that he was hoping for. So the most unrealistic thing about Clerks, I guess, is that there's so much downtime. Anyway, at the end of this essay, he talks about trying to be a filmmaker and continuing on in his journey. And he says, you know, let me find the exact quote. With the benefit of hindsight, it's clear the store was never hell. It was the exact opposite. And that's why I'm going back. They say you can never go home again. Watch me. Clerks 2 in 2005. This is where he announced he was doing Clerks 2. And the reason why he decided to do Clerks 2, and they talk about it a bit on the commentary tracks for Clerks 2, which I'll get into next time, and on the documentary for that movie, is because the making of this documentary got everybody so inspired and reminded everybody why they fell in love with movies in the first place, why they wanted to be filmmakers. You know, him, the actors, Scott Mosier, you know, his family. It just reminded everybody, like, oh yeah, like before the Jersey Girl of it all, with the big name stars and the big budgets and the studios and, you know, celebrities and all this nonsense, the reason why we wanted to do this is just to tell our stories. And the making of the Snowball Effect documentary, a lot of people say, people who don't even know the story of Clerks, that when you watch the Snowball Effect documentary, it makes you want to go make a movie. That's the same thing that happened to Kevin Smith. When he watched it, he wanted to go make a movie as well. The movie he wanted to make was Clerks 2. So, The documentary takes us from the very beginning. Not just like, hey, I had an idea to write a screenplay, but all the way back to Kevin Smith, you know, as a kid, and falling in love with movies with his dad, who would take him out of school to take him to go see Raiders of the Lost Ark or The World According to Garp. Takes him through junior high and high school, where he was in theater and he had his friends, and for talent shows he would write scenes out, and you know, he wanted to do makeup. That was his initial thing, is he liked doing makeup. So he'd write these fun sketches, which are on the documentary and on the DVD, of like, you know, the Ronald McDonald being tortured by the Keebler elf, or something like that. Very big sketch comedy shows, because he fell in love with Saturday Night Live and the Blues Brothers. That was his first big inspiration. So he started writing these sketches, and he would actually write full scenes, and he would get written up in the local paper. You know, local kid Kevin Smith is a great writer. And that's what he wanted to do. He would write. And, you know, he went to go see Slacker when he was 21 years old. Having never really gone to New York all that often, like he would go for comic conventions, but he wasn't a film freak. He was a movie fan, you know, he liked watching movies. And there was a kid named Vincent Pereira who came into the store and started working there as like the assistant, like, you know, just part-time. He would be like the milk guy. And they bonded over Twin Peaks, Kevin and Vincent. And Vincent was like, hey man, they show, like, if you like movies, you like Twin Peaks, you might like these other movies, and kind of introduced Kevin into the world of art film. Like David Lynch or, you know, Jim Jarmusch, people like that. So they started going into the city, into New York, to see, you know, small art house theater movies that weren't playing in Jersey. And one night, I think on his birthday, I could be very wrong about this, I'm not sure the exact date. One night they saw Slacker, and it blew Kevin away. He couldn't believe that this kid in Austin, you know, with $3,500, or not $3,500, I think it's like $35,000, something like that is what Slacker cost, that this kid in Austin just went around and got his friends together and kind of stole shots around the city, and he made a movie, and that movie was going to be purchased, and, you know, that guy has a career now, and that kind of made him realize that he could do it. He could make movies, which is what Clerks did for me, and probably a shitload of other people. So based on that, you know, he bought a Laserdisc player, he started watching all kinds of movies, being obsessed with cinema. He went to film school, which was a very strange thing, and like they talk very in depth in this documentary about his personal life, about his friends who, they're not filmmakers, you know, they wanted to go get drunk on the weekends, and he was not that guy, you know, and his other friends, Brian and Walt, people he made friends with after high school, Brian and Walt being the guys from Comic Book Man, they were kind of like him, just kind of like slacker, layabout, after, not going to college, you know, we're just kind of listing through life, and Kevin and Brian Johnson would go to community college together, and they also worked at the store together, and that relationship of Kevin and Brian working at the store became Dante and Randall, you know. Kevin's often said that Clerks is the story of himself and the guy he always wanted to be. That's, you know, Dante is this sad sack kind of character who's trapped in his life, and Randall is the smartass, above it all, you know, lets things roll off his back, very clever kind of guy. That was his friend Brian Johnson, and so he told his friends, you know, I'm going to go to film school, and they were like, what? Okay, why? He's like, because I can go, you know, I can go learn to make a movie, and when I come back I can teach you how to do a thing, and I can teach you how to do a thing, and we can make a movie. And while he was there, he met Scott Mosier, and then Scott enters the documentary, and we get a little bit about his backstory and his history. And, you know, the eventual story is they made Clerks. And it's so goddamn inspiring, you know. They talk about, there's this, you know, Brian Johnson, Kevin Smith's friend. Apparently there was some falling out, I don't know what happened, but Brian Johnson's not in Clerks. It's one of the only movies of Kevin's that Brian's not in. Walt is in the movie like 7 times because people would fall out, people they'd hired to be in the movie wouldn't show up at 3 in the morning. So they would just throw another wig on Walt Flanagan. So if you've seen Clerks, Walt Flanagan plays the guidance counselor who fucks around with the eggs. He plays the dude at the beginning who buys cigarettes. He plays the offended customer who gets shown like the nudie magazine at the beginning, or in the middle. So, you know, Walt's in the movie like 6 times. But Brian's not, because I guess they'd had a falling out, so he wasn't around, and Brian kind of missed the whole thing. But eventually, when Kevin Smith showed him the final, you know, here you go, this is Clerks, you know, he said, what do you think? And Brian said, I don't know, it's really interesting. And they kind of talk, well, I mean, I don't know. And Kevin said, well, what do you think about the dialogue, the characters? And he said, I like it. They kind of talk like us, you know, they kind of talk like we talk. And Kevin said that was the idea, you know, I wanted to make a movie about our friendship. I wanted to celebrate us, and I wanted to make a movie showing how cool my friends are. And Brian Johnson, who's a very, very intelligent dude, very emotional guy. If you've listened to any of like the podcasts he's been on, he's had a hard life, and he's one of those people who's like so fucking smart that like the world is hard to live in, something I can relate to. And he doesn't often get like overly sentimental or emotional, you know, he just kind of takes things at face value. And to hear him talk about that moment where it's like, wow, like my best friend made a movie about me. Very powerful stuff. So they talk about the making of Clerks, which is a fantastic story in its own right. Like, they had to shoot at night. Kevin would work during the day at the store. They'd lock the store up. They'd turn all the lights off and all the coolers off because there'd be buzzing noises. They'd put the shutters down, and then they would just shoot all night long. And then in the morning, they'd clean up, and Kevin would go back to work. And, you know, Kevin was running on about, like, 2 hours of sleep a night. I think they shot it in, like, 19 days straight through, which is fucking insane. It probably could have been an even faster shoot, you know, because obviously they weren't shooting full days. They were only shooting about 6 hours a night. Then when the movie's done, when they were finally finished shooting it, everybody kind of just went away. You know, the actors went back to their regular jobs. You know, some people, like Dave, the guy who shot it, Dave Klein, he went home because he was done. He shot the movie. And Scott Mosier stuck around in Jersey, and months later, you know, they were still working on the movie. And there's a great story that Jeff Anderson, the guy who plays Randall, months or weeks later after finishing shooting Clerks, came into the video store to rent a movie, and Kevin was there. And Kevin was like, he had this Avid machine, which is an old school, like, you know, manual editing machine where you get the film and you thread it through and you have to physically cut it. That was in the video store. And there's piles of film everywhere and, you know, strips of film hanging so they can line up their shots in sequence. And Jeff came in and he was like, what the fuck is going on here? What is all this? And Kevin was like, this is the movie. And Jeff was like, what do you mean? I thought we finished that. And he was like, well, we finished shooting it, but, like, this is a movie. Jeff was like, okay, like, do you have the movie I wanted to rent? Because I need to get out of here. So no one really believed anything was going to happen with it. And they finished it and they submitted it, and then it goes to the IFFM. That was their plan. I think that's where Slacker had premiered as well. And they got, like, the midnight Sunday night showing, and there was literally, like, 5 people in the audience, including the cast and crew. Like, it was a really bad show. Nobody laughed. That was the first time that they'd really got to watch the movie. And Kevin tells the story about, like, holy shit, I can't believe they won't stop cursing. What the fuck was I thinking? This is so embarrassing. I'm never going to pay these credit cards off. What the fuck am I going to do with my life? But there was this one old guy alone in the theater that they were like, I don't know what that guy's about, but okay. And he liked the movie. His name is Bob Hawk. And he's an independent producer's rep. And he reached out to Kevin and kind of got some press about it and got some notices and encouraged Kevin to submit it to Sundance and to encourage him to get it in the hands of John Pearson, who is the producer's rep of the 80s and 90s. You know, Spike Lee, Richard Linklater, Michael Moore, Kevin Smith. There's a whole book about John Pearson's career as a producer's rep called Spike, Mike, Slackers, and Dykes, covering his amazing tenure as this producer's rep. And a producer's rep is somebody who sees a movie or an unfinished movie and just kind of helps it along to get it made, helping an independent film get made. So John Pearson gets a hold of it, and there's all these old tape recordings from, remember when answering machines were a thing? There's all these answering machine messages in the movie because Kevin was still working at the store. While all this is going on, Kevin's still back at the Quick Stop, wondering maybe something might happen, assuming probably not, and wondering, fuck, he ruined his life. There's going to be, 30 grand worth of credit card debt he's never going to pay off. And he would get these phone messages from Janet Maslin, a film critic he loved, saying, hey, I saw your movie. Or John Pearson saying, Kevin, hey, I saw your movie. I watched it again. I just don't know about this fucking thing. Because it was such a weird... Clerks is not the most obvious audience-based, commercial-type film. It's black and white, it's rough, there's not a lot of female characters in it. It doesn't have, the typical indie film things of being about, minorities or having a specific audience to relate to. Like, this is about a couple of white 20-something kids. And it's very vulgar, and it's very, offensive in a lot of ways. So there was a lot of talk, I don't even know if we can do this. But John Pearson couldn't stop watching it. So eventually he decided to help Kevin along with it, and they got it into Sundance. And then they tell that story of going to Sundance, and they tell the next story of going to Cannes, and they tell the story of, winning some awards, and the Miramax buying the movie, and it's just this phenomenal fucking story. The story of just, this kid who fucking grew up in a small town and fell in love with comics, fell in love with George Carlin, fell in love with Saturday Night Live, and started writing. And it all worked out for him. The sacrifices Kevin made are pretty impressive. He sold his comic book collection, he harangued his family and friends for money. Just before they were about to start shooting, there was a flood in Jersey that, ruined their house, fucked up his car. But luckily, the insurance company paid for the car, and he put that money towards Clerks. So it's just this really awesome story about if you work hard enough and if you believe in something enough, you have the right people around you, you can go make your dreams come true in a way that makes sense for you. Like, it's not about selling out, it's about telling a story that matters to you and finding people who also love those stories. So that's the Snowball Effect documentary. On the DVD, there's a bunch of deleted scenes from the documentary because they interviewed everybody. Scott Mosier's in it, Brian and Walt are in it, Kevin's high school friends, Mike Bellicose and Ernie O'Donnell, who are both in Clerks. His parents are in it, all the producers, like I said, Harvey Weinstein, the younger guys at Miramax, because Harvey Weinstein didn't really like Clerks on the first viewing, didn't even finish it, like he left 5 minutes in. But all the younger guys at Miramax, who were kind of like his assistants or lower men on the totem pole, they really related to Clerks because it spoke to their kind of generation, you know, that 20-something, you know, slacker 90s ennui that was going on then. So they're all in it as well. Obviously Kevin's in it. The whole cast is in it. There's footage from the auditions. It's fantastic. Because they shot so many interviews, there's a lot of deleted scenes of just other people telling stories, and those are absolutely worth a watch as well. There's some great stories about, like, Kevin and Scott got into a huge fight after shooting the movie because they were editing it, and Scott Mosier was still in Jersey, you know, sleeping on the floor pretty much in their flooded, like Kevin Smith's flooded house. And Kevin brought a girl to the store and was like, "Hey Scott, would you mind watching the store? I'm going to go show her the movie." And Scott was like, "Okay," but he didn't know how to work the thing, and he was stressed out and not sleeping, and it was supposed to be like 15 minutes. Like, Scott Mosier knew it was like 15 minutes of movie. And like an hour and a half went by before Kevin came back, and it's because Kevin was off fucking the girl in the video store, which is fine. So that night, Scott just kind of lets Kevin have it, and he's like, "This is fucking bullshit, man. Like, I didn't come down here to work at a video store. You know, I came here to help make this movie, and like, you're off fucking some girl, leaving me alone in the goddamn convenience store, and like, I don't know what I'm doing, and I miss my family, and I'm far from home, and I'm sleeping on the fucking floor, and no one's getting paid, and this is really fucking terrible." And while Mosier's going on, rambling and ranting, and, you know, legitimately complaining about how fucked up the situation is, Kevin starts to do this. And Scott keeps going on, and Kevin keeps getting bigger and bigger, just going like, fucking, just... And eventually, Mosier's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And Kevin goes, "I'm trying to find you a tissue." And Mosier was like, "I will leave!" Hearing them tell that story is really funny, so, I don't know. There's a lot of cool scenes, a lot of cool behind-the-scenes stories. The way Jason Mewes talks about the movie is really interesting, because he's the most outsider of it all. Like, he's younger than all those guys, you know, Kevin, Walt, and Brian. So while they were in their, like, mid-20s, I think Jason Mewes was still a teenager. Maybe he was 20 years old. And, like, very into drinking and smoking weed and all that stuff. So, like, the notion of let's go make a movie and things being... he didn't get it at all. So hearing him talk about it now as a sober adult who's become a real successful actor, hearing him talk about his first experience with this weird movie and how his friend wrote a movie for him, that's also really inspiring and wonderful to see him talk about, like, I had no idea what was going on. I couldn't believe the magic that was about to happen. So, like I said, it's a really inspiring documentary. It's really fun to watch. It's hard for me to watch, like I said, because I just... In the same way, like, I guess if you just broke up with your girlfriend, you don't want to listen to certain songs because they remind you of her. Or, you know, certain movies you can't watch because they take you to a dark place. There's a sequence in it that hits you too hard, or a line of dialogue, or whatever. The Snowball Effect documentary, while I love it, it's amazing, inspiring movie, and you know, it's like I said, the reason that I really like fall in love with who Kevin is and why I did this series and why I want to be a part of his world and not just like an employee of his or whatever. Why I want to be Kevin Smith's friend. Even with all that, it's hard to watch because it paints a portrait of a possible future that I haven't gotten yet. I'm not sure if I'm ever going to get. It's scary to watch that movie and see like that he did it. Like those guys got together, they took the risk and it worked out. But what if it doesn't for me? It's very scary. I don't know if I'm ever going to be a filmmaker beyond doing things like this for YouTube. So, like I said, it's the movie. It's doing that documentary got everybody excited for making another movie and going back to their roots and doing another Clerks. And I'll talk more about it next time when I actually get to Clerks 2. But Jason Mewes had finally gotten clean, and like he wanted to do another movie because he loved those characters and all the and Jersey Girl fucking sucks. Like it was not a bad movie, but like horrible experience. Mosier was thinking about quitting being a filmmaker because it was just such a bad experience. Kevin had gotten a job writing the Green Hornet movie. Eventually it would become the Seth Rogen film. But the Weinsteins owned the Green Hornet, and that was going to be Kevin Smith's next movie. He was going to do a big, full-on comic book movie that he was going to write and direct. So things were heading off and into very strange places where Mosier was going to quit making movies and Kevin's going to make a superhero film, and doing this documentary, The Snowball Effect, helped everybody realize, like, no, the thing we want to do are what we started doing, movies that matter to us, the things that nobody else is doing. And that should be Clerks 2. So Kevin wrote the script and they made the movie and blah, blah, blah. And I'll talk more about Clerks 2 next time. But that's the Snowball Effect documentary. Sorry if I'm a little bit, overly emotional on this one. Kevin Smith means a lot to me. The story of Clerks means a lot to me. I just hope I can do it someday. I hope I'm lucky enough to write, I hope I'm talented enough to have an idea and write a screenplay that people love. I hope I'm lucky enough to meet people who want to join me in that crazy-ass, quixotic crusade to try and make an independent film for no money. Hope I'm lucky enough to get a career and, travel the world. And yeah, that'd be great. Mosier's got this great moment. Again, I think it's cut. I think it's an extended interview with him where he talks about Clerks was like winning the lottery 17 times. And you just couldn't get over it. Just making the movie was like winning the lottery. And then you get into Sundance, and the way they felt was like winning the lottery. And then they get to go to Cannes, and every new level was just insane. It was life, that's the thing that fucks me up, I guess, about this documentary. The fact that life can change fucking, with the flip of a switch. That you can go from who you think you are and what you think your life is to something completely different and unimaginably great in such a quick way. If the cards line up, the dominoes fall in the right way. So, one last little PS about the documentary. When they were there in Cannes, that was the same year as Pulp Fiction, which nobody had seen yet. And obviously Kevin Smith, Scott Mosier, they all loved Reservoir Dogs. That was a big inspiration for them to get into independent filmmaking. And, the Weinsteins had Pulp Fiction, and they held a screening just for, the Weinstein family. So, nobody had seen this movie yet. There was no press there. It was just, people that were part of the Weinsteins, or the Miramax family. So, Kevin, Scott, a bunch of other people, they got to sit there and watch Pulp Fiction before it happened. So they got to walk around the Cannes Film Festival knowing that everything was about to change because they'd seen this movie and holy shit. People are going to fucking love this thing. So, a lot of cool shit happens because they made this movie and it all worked out for them. To get to the Dear Kevin of it all, Dear Kevin Smith, the Snowball Effect documentary, the story of how you made Clerks, the story of your childhood and your life, is a really personal, inspiring one for me. I want you to make another one, first of all. That's an easy thing to say in this Dear Kevin. Please do another very extensive documentary. I love the one in Clerks 2. I like the Zack and Miri documentary. I like all the Red State stuff, but I'd very much like to see another, feature-length, hour-and-a-half, full-on, really in-depth documentary covering something. Maybe do one that covers the whole Canada trilogy you're doing, but I like getting a glimpse behind the scenes and seeing how the people in your life say a thing that leads to an idea that you have that leads to a screenplay or whatever. It's a really inspiring documentary. You're a very inspiring person. You're one of my heroes. So, please do another one. The other thing is, I guess, I can't believe you did this, man. I don't know how you had the stones to do it. I hope I can someday get my nuts up enough to take the risk and make a movie, to potentially risk ruining the rest of my life, or the next decade of my life, paying off credit cards or whatever it is, to take the opportunity and risk everything for a story I want to tell. So, as always in these Dear Kevins, sir, just thank you. Thank you for the work you've done. Thank you for making Clerks. Thank you for releasing this documentary. Thank you for being an inspiration for me. And if I'm lucky and if I'm talented enough, I can maybe do my own thing someday. And, yeah. Thank you, Kevin Smith. Sincerely, George. So that's all for this time. I feel like I've been talking for quite a while. Obviously, this is a very important piece of the Kevin Smith lore to me, the Snowball Effect documentary. The how it all got made of it all. It also just goes to show you that, if you take anybody, whether they're, famous or not, and you really shine a light into how they got to where they are, that it can lead to some pretty amazing personal, inspiring or enlightening moments. That's one of the reasons I love it as well. It's not just because I like Clerks, but because it's rare that you get to see such an intimate portrait of just anybody and how, showing their progression. I think that's part of the reason why Making a Murderer is such a popular thing, is that it takes you on the journey of that character from when he was a kid all the way through, a bunch of horrible shit happening to him. So seek it out if you can. I'm sure you can find parts of it on YouTube or download it somewhere. Like I said, it's on the Clerks X DVD box set. It's also on the Clerks 15th Anniversary Blu-ray. It's fantastic. It's worth your time. It's a really inspiring movie, really inspiring documentary. If you like if you like stuff like American Movie or The King of Kong, or just documentaries that make you feel good and that make you want to go out and do something, check out The Snowball Effect, because whether you like Clerks or not, it's just this wonderful, it's let's go put on a show. It's such a cool notion, I guess. The idea of let's go do a thing. Come on, guys, we can do it. And they did it, and it worked out, and it worked out spectacularly for all of them. So, thank you as always for watching. Check me out on Facebook, Twitter, the blog, all the usual things. I will put up the link in the annotation. And I'll see you next time, tomorrow, talking about Clerks 2, and moving on to, the next part of Kevin Smith's world. I always say there's different phases, phase 1, phase 2. We're definitely into phase 2, but I don't know, it seems like Jersey Girl is its own thing, which is why I spent so long talking about Jersey Girl. Jersey Girl is definitely the beginning of phase 2, but Clerks 2 is a reaction to Jersey Girl, but for me, Clerks 2 is really the beginning of the actual phase 2 of Kevin's career, which I would say goes up until, say, Cop Out. We're into phase 3 now. Anyway, hope you're enjoying the series. I've got some more ideas for series I'm going to do. I just found out about a West Wing podcast called West Wing Weekly with Josh Molina. So expect a vlog series of me talking about every episode of The West Wing, which I've been wanting to do for years anyway. Go watch The West Wing if you haven't watched it. Nothing to do with Kevin Smith, but go watch The West Wing. And I'll see you tomorrow talking about Clerks 2. Thank you, guys.